The twin sons of Velcor Prime were sitting behind the Imperial Palace when Captain Day-Wan arrived at the main gates. He wore his best uniform, the one with the Earth emblem on the shoulder and the diplomatic ribbons across his chest. The palace was massive, built from white stone that seemed to glow in the fading light. Tall towers reached toward the purple sky, and golden banners hung from every window. Day-Wan had been on Velcor Prime for 6 months. He came with 3 cargo ships full of medical supplies, water purifiers, and engineering equipment. The outer colonies needed help badly. A disease had spread through 5 settlements, and their water systems were breaking down. Earth had sent Day-Wan and his team to fix the problems. It had been hard work. Long days in the hot sun, working alongside Velcorian engineers who didn't always trust humans. Nights spent in medical tents, helping doctors treat the sick. But slowly, things got better. The water flowed clean again. The sick people recovered. The colonies started to grow food again. Now it was time for the Grand Convergence Festival. Every species in this part of the galaxy sent representatives to Velcor Prime. It was a celebration of peace and cooperation. There would be a great feast in the palace, where diplomats would eat together and share stories. Day-Wan had received an official invitation 3 weeks ago. He walked up the long stone pathway to the palace doors. Other diplomats were arriving too. He saw the tall, blue-skinned Thresh walking in groups of 4. The small, furry Pinnix chatted excitedly as they climbed the steps. Even the Kryn were there, their scaled bodies reflecting the light from the torches that lined the path. At the great doors, Velcorian guards stood watch. They were tall and covered in golden fur, with faces that looked like a mix between a cat and a lion. Their ears were pointed and twitched at every sound. They wore ceremonial armor that shined like mirrors. Day-Win reached the doors and smiled at the nearest guard. "Good evening. I'm Captain Day-Wan of Earth. I'm here for the feast." The guard looked at him with yellow eyes. "Wait here," he said, his voice deep and rough. Day-Wan waited. He watched other diplomats pass through the doors without any trouble. Music floated out from inside, along with the smell of roasted meat and sweet spices. His stomach growled. He hadn't eaten since breakfast. After several minutes, an older Velcorian emerged from the palace. She was clearly important. Her fur was silver with age, and she wore robes of deep purple with gold thread. Jewels hung from her ears and around her neck. Other Velcorians nearby bowed their heads when they saw her. "I am High Matriarch Vesra," she said, looking down at Day-Wan. "You are the human?" "Yes, Matriarch. Captain Day-Wan. I received an invitation to—" "I know what you received," Vesra interrupted. Her tail swished behind her, a sign of irritation. "There has been a mistake. You cannot enter." Day-Wan blinked. "I'm sorry? Is there a problem with my credentials? I can show you—" "Your credentials are not the issue." Vesra's voice was cold. "You are human. Humans are not welcome at this feast." "But the invitation—" Day-Wan pulled the elegant card from his pocket. It was written in both Velcorian script and Earth Standard. It clearly said he was invited. "The invitation was sent before we learned certain facts about your species." Vesra crossed her arms. "We have discovered that humans help anyone who asks. Anyone. Even our enemies. Even species we are in conflict with." Day-Wan felt confused. "Yes, that's true. We helped the Kryn Collective last year when they had a famine. But—" "Exactly." Vesra's ears flattened against her head, a sign of anger. "The Kryn have fought 3 wars with us. They have killed our people. Yet you gave them food and medicine. What kind of honor is that?" "They were starving," Day-Wan said quietly. "Their children were dying. They are enemies. One does not help enemies. It shows weakness. It shows you have no loyalty, no sense of proper alliance." Vesra stepped closer. "Humans are scavengers. You take help from anyone. You give help to anyone. You have no pure traditions, no bloodline honor. You mix with every species you meet. You are not worthy of this feast." Other diplomats had stopped to watch. Some looked uncomfortable. Others seemed to agree with the matriarch. The Kryn delegate started to step forward, but his companion held him back. Day Wan felt heat rising in his face. He wanted to argue. He wanted to explain that helping others wasn't weakness, that compassion wasn't the same as having no honor, but he could see in Vesra's eyes that she had already decided. "I understand," he said finally. "I'll leave." "You will wait outside." Vesra pointed to the courtyard beside the palace. "Diplomats may not leave the grounds during the feast. It is tradition, but you may not enter either. You will wait there until the celebration is finished." "That's hours from now," Daewon said. "Yes." Vesra turned and walked back through the doors. "Guards, make sure the human stays in the courtyard." The great doors closed with a heavy boom. Daewon stood there for a moment, feeling dozens of eyes on him. Then he turned and walked to the courtyard. It was a large space surrounded by high walls. Stone benches sat beneath strange alien trees with silver leaves. Lanterns hung from posts, providing some light. Through tall windows, Daewon could see into the feast hall. He could see the long tables filled with food. He could see diplomats laughing and talking. He sat down on a cold stone bench and pulled out his tablet. If he couldn't join the feast, he could at least catch up on work. He had reports to file about the colony projects. He had supply requests to approve for the next mission. The temperature was dropping. Velcor Prime's nights were cold, and Daewon's uniform wasn't made for sitting outside for hours. He ignored the chill and focused on his tablet screen. Inside the palace, music started playing. It was beautiful, with instruments that sounded like bells and drums, and something like violins. People began to dance. Daewon could see their shadows moving past the windows. He thought about the last 6 months. He thought about the little Velcorian girl in Colony 7 who had been so sick with the disease. Her name was Sora. The human doctors had worked for 2 days straight to save her. When she finally opened her eyes, she had smiled at Daewon. Her mother had cried and thanked him in Broken Earth standard. He thought about the water engineer named Tal, who had been so angry when the humans first arrived. "We don't need your help," Tal had said. But after working together for a week, Tal had started to warm up to them. By the end, Tal had taught Daewon Velcorian songs while they repaired pipes together. Did none of that matter? Did helping people mean nothing because humans also helped their enemies? Daewon sighed and returned to his reports. The night grew colder. Inside, the feast continued. Outside, the human sat alone in the dark, doing his work and waiting for morning. Inside the great feast hall, young Kier pressed his face against the window. He was 8 years old, small for his age, with bright orange fur and curious green eyes. His mother had told him to sit at the table with the other cubs, but the food didn't interest him right now. Something else had caught his attention. "There's someone outside," he whispered to his friend Liz. Liz was 10, bigger and bolder than Kier. Her fur was dark brown with black stripes, and she never backed down from anything. She pushed through the crowd of adult Velcorians to reach the window. "It's the human," she said. "The one from the colonies." A third cub joined them. Nem was 9 years old, quiet and thoughtful. His gray fur was neat and well-groomed, and he always asked questions that made adults uncomfortable. "Why is he outside? Isn't this feast for all the diplomats?" "Mother said humans aren't allowed," Kier explained. "She said they have no honor." Liz made a rude sound with her nose. "That's stupid. Humans have honor. My aunt told me stories." The 3 cubs watched as the human sat on a stone bench in the courtyard. He looked cold. He was staring at some kind of glowing tablet in his hands, working on something. Every few minutes, he would look up at the feast hall, then back down at his work. "He looks sad," Kier said softly. "He looks lonely," Nem added. More cubs started to gather at the window. There were always many young ones at the grand convergence. It was a chance for the cubs of important families to meet each other and learn about diplomacy. Most of them found it boring, but watching the human outside was more interesting than listening to adults talk about trade agreements. "I remember him," a small female cub said. Her name was Issa, and she was only 6. "He came to our colony. Our water stopped working and everyone was getting sick from bad water. The human fixed it." "He came to our colony too," said a larger male cub named Ren. "My little brother had the red fever. The human doctors gave him medicine. They stayed up all night to make sure he didn't die." Liz turned to look at the other cubs. "How many of you have seen the humans in the colonies?" Almost every cub raised their paw. There were 12 of them now, ranging from age 6 to 12. They all had stories. "The human engineers taught me how to fix a water filter," one said. "A human doctor let me look through her medical scanner," another said. "When our harvest failed, humans brought us food," said a third. Kier frowned. "Then why does the matriarch say they have no honor?" Nem, always the thoughtful one, spoke up. "Because they help the Kryn too. I heard the adults talking about it. They said humans help everyone, even enemies. The adults think that's wrong." "But if someone is sick or hungry, shouldn't we help them?" Isa asked. Her voice was small and confused. "That's what my mother tells me. She says it's our duty to help those who need it." "Not if they're enemies," Ren said, but he didn't sound sure. "At least that's what the old laws say." Liz watched the human through the window. He had put down his tablet and was rubbing his arms, trying to stay warm. The night was getting colder, and he was just sitting there in the dark courtyard. "Look at him," she said. "He's not complaining. He's not angry. He's just working. Like what we think doesn't matter to him." "Maybe it doesn't," Nem said. "Maybe he's used to people treating him badly." That thought made Kerr feel sick to his stomach. "That's not right. He helped us. He helped so many of us. And now he's sitting outside in the cold while we eat and dance." An adult Velkorian walked past and noticed the cubs at the window. "Come away from there," the adult said. "Don't pay attention to the human. He's not important." The cubs moved away from the window, but they kept glancing back. They returned to their tables, but the food tasted wrong now. The music seemed too loud. The laughter seemed false. Kier pushed his food around his plate. It was delicious, the kind of meat that was only served at special feasts. But he couldn't stop thinking about the human outside. He couldn't stop thinking about the time he had visited the colonies with his parents. He had been sick then. Really sick. The colony doctors didn't know what to do. Then the humans arrived. A human doctor named Hai had examined him with strange earth equipment. She had given him medicine that tasted terrible but made the pain go away. She had stayed with him all night, even though she must have been tired from traveling. When Kier got better, he had asked Hai why she helped him. She had smiled and said, "Because you needed help. That's reason enough." Now that same kindness was outside in the cold, rejected and alone. Liz appeared at Kier's side. "Are you thinking what I'm thinking?" "That this is wrong?" Kier asked. "Yes, very wrong." Liz looked around the feast hall. "The adults are stupid sometimes. My father says wisdom comes with age, but I think adults just get better at making excuses." Nem joined them, followed by Isa and several other cubs. They formed a small group away from the adult tables. "We should do something," Isa said. "The human helped us. We should help him." "But what can we do?" Ren asked. "We're just cubs. The matriarch made her decision." Liz's eyes were bright with determination. "The matriarch can make decisions for adults, but we're cubs. We follow the code of cubs, not adult rules. and the code says we must show gratitude to those who help us. The Code of Cubs was ancient, a set of rules that young Velcorians learned before anything else. It taught basics like being kind, telling the truth, and showing gratitude. Adults often forgot about the code, but cubs took it very seriously. "Show gratitude," Nem repeated slowly. "The human brought us medicine and food and clean water. We should bring him food now." "But we'll get in trouble," one of the smaller cubs said nervously. "Maybe," Liz admitted. "But isn't that what honor really is? Doing what's right even when it's hard? Even when you might get punished?" Keir looked at the feast spread out on the tables. There was so much food. Mountains of roasted meat, bowls of fruits from a dozen worlds, pitchers of sweet nectar, plates of festival cakes. More food than all the diplomats could possibly eat. "He hasn't eaten anything," Keir said quietly. "I've been watching. He's been out there for almost an hour and he hasn't eaten anything." "Then we bring him food," Liz said firmly. "Right now, before the adults stop us." "How many are with me?" She looked around at the other cubs. One by one, paws raised. First Keir and Nem, then Isa, then Ren. Then all 12 cubs raised their paws in agreement. "Good," Liz said. "Grab a plate. Take the best food you can carry and follow me." The cubs moved carefully through the feast hall. They tried not to attract attention as they approached the serving tables. Keir picked up a large platter of ceremonial meat, the kind that was blessed by priests and only served at the most important events. Liz grabbed a crystal pitcher full of nectar. Nem carefully balanced a bowl of harvest fruits, the first fruits of the season that were supposed to bring good luck. Other cubs gathered bread, cakes, vegetables, and more. Their arms were full. Some of the food was heavy, but they held on tight. An adult servant noticed them and frowned. "What are you cubs doing with that food?" "Those are ceremonial dishes." "We're taking them to someone who deserves them more than we do," Liz said boldly. The servant's eyes widened. He hurried toward the adult tables, clearly going to report what was happening. "Run!" Liz whispered urgently. The 12 cubs moved quickly toward the main doors, their arms full of plates and bowls and pitchers. Adults were starting to notice now. Parents called out to their children. The music faltered, and then they heard it, the voice of the high matriarch cutting through the noise like a blade. "Stop!" But the cubs were already at the doors. Keir pushed against the heavy wood with his shoulder. The doors began to swing open, letting in the cold night air. The human looked up from his tablet, surprise clear on his face. The cubs stepped out into the courtyard, carrying their feast into the darkness. The cold night air hit the cubs as they stepped into the courtyard. Their ceremonial clothes, beautiful and decorated with jewels and fine thread, were not meant for the outdoor chill. But none of them hesitated. They walked in a line toward the human who sat alone on the stone bench. Daewon had looked up when the doors opened. Shock was written clearly on his face. He set down his tablet and stood up slowly, watching as 12 young Velcorians approached him. They carried plates and bowls and pitchers that were too large for their small paws. Some wobbled under the weight, but they kept walking. Keir led the way, holding the ceremonial meat platter in front of him like a precious treasure. His arms were shaking from the weight, but his face was determined. Behind him came Lace with the crystal pitcher, Nem with the fruit bowl, and all the others carrying their chosen dishes. "What are you doing?" Daewon asked, his voice gentle but confused. "You shouldn't be out here." Liz spoke first because she was always the boldest. "You brought medicine to our colonies when we were sick. You brought food when we were hungry. You brought clean water when ours was poison. Now we bring food to you." The cubs arranged themselves in a circle around Daewon. Carefully, they began to place their dishes on the ground at his feet. The ceremonial meat platter went down first. Then the crystal pitcher of nectar, the bowl of harvest fruits, plates of bread and cakes, vegetables prepared with special spices, Everything was arranged in a traditional pattern, the same pattern used in old Velkorian ceremonies when honoring a hero. Day-Wan stared at the food, then at the cubs. This is too much. You'll get in trouble for this. Your parents? Let them be angry, Isa said in her small voice. She was the youngest, barely 6 years old, but her words were brave. You helped my colony. You saved my cousin. This is right. The Code of Cubs says we must show gratitude, Nem explained, his gray fur ruffling in the wind. You helped us. We help you. That's how honor works. The adults forgot, but we remember. Behind them, the feast hall doors burst open again. High Matriarch Vesera stormed into the courtyard, her silver fur bristling with anger. Her purple robes flowed behind her like water. Other adults followed, including many of the cubs' parents. Return to the feast immediately! Vesera's voice was like thunder. Her tail lashed back and forth, and her ears were flat against her head. The cubs didn't move. They stayed in their circle around Day-Wan, protecting him with their small bodies. Kyr's mother rushed forward. Kyr, come here right now. You are embarrassing our family. But Kyr shook his head. I'm honoring our family. You told me yourself that we must never forget those who help us. The human helped us. I won't forget. Lys's father tried next. He was a large Velkorian, a military commander with many medals. Lys, this is not your decision to make. Return inside. No, Lys said simply. Her voice didn't shake. You taught me to stand up for what's right. You taught me that true strength means protecting others. The human protected our colonies. Now I protect him. Parents moved forward to grab their cubs, but the young ones linked arms. They formed a chain around Day-Wan, 12 small bodies standing between him and the angry adults. Please, Day-Wan said, stepping forward. Don't punish them. They were just being kind. I'll leave right now. I don't want them to get hurt because of me. You'll stay exactly where you are, Vesera snapped. Then she turned to the cubs. You are children. You don't understand what you're doing. This human has no honor. He helps our enemies. He helped me. Isa's voice rang out, high and clear. Tears were running down her furry face. When I was sick, when the colony doctor said I might die, he stayed with me. The human doctor, she held my paw and told me stories all night so I wouldn't be scared. And when I got better, she cried. She cried because she was happy I was alive. How is that no honor? Other cubs began speaking too, their voices overlapping. They fixed our water. They saved my brother. They taught us how to repair our equipment. They didn't ask for anything in return. They didn't even want medals or recognition. Nem stepped forward from the circle. He was trembling, not from fear, but from emotion. High Matriarch, you teach us the law of scales. You say everything must balance. The human gave us medicine, food, water, and knowledge. He gave us life. What did we give in return? Nothing, Vesera said coldly, because he did it without honor, without proper... We gave him nothing, Nem interrupted, which was shocking, because cubs never interrupted the High Matriarch. He saved our lives, and we gave him nothing. The scales are completely unbalanced, so we bring food. It's not enough, it's not nearly enough, but it's something. It starts to balance the scales. The courtyard had gone quiet. More adults had come out from the feast hall. Diplomats from other species watched from the doorway. The Kryn delegate was there, his scaled face hard to read. The tall Thresh representatives stood together, their blue skin almost glowing in the lantern light. One of the Kryn stepped forward. His name was Vork, and he was their chief ambassador. High Matriarch, may I speak? Vesera's tail twitched with irritation. This is not your concern, Vork. But it is. Vork walked into the courtyard, his clawed feet clicking on the stone. You reject the human because he helped us, because we are your enemies. But do you know why he helped us? Because humans are weak and... because our children were starving. Vork's voice was hard. Our harvest failed. Disease killed our crops. We sent out calls for help to every species we knew. Only the humans answered. They brought food and seeds and agricultural equipment. They asked for nothing in payment. We offered them money, another Kryn added. We offered them trade agreements. We offered them land. They refused everything. The human captain said, "Lives are not transactions." He said they would help because it was right, not because they would benefit. A Thresh representative spoke up, her musical voice carrying across the courtyard. The humans rebuilt our collapsed nursery last year. 300 of our young were trapped underground. Human engineers worked for 3 days without sleep. 2 of them were injured in cave-ins, but refused to leave until every young one was safe. They asked for no payment, no recognition, no medals. More voices joined in. A diplomat from the Pinnac cluster spoke about how humans had shared water purification technology freely. A representative from the Tal Consortium told how human doctors had stayed on their planet for 6 months, fighting a plague, asking nothing in return. Story after story, species after species, a dozen different peoples, all with the same type of tale, humans helping, humans giving, humans asking for nothing. Day Wan stood in the center of the courtyard, surrounded by cubs who refused to abandon him, listening to others speak about his people's kindness. He felt overwhelmed. He hadn't realized that so many people had been watching, that so many remembered. Vesera was silent now. Her ears were no longer flat with anger. They were upright, listening. Her tail had stopped lashing. She looked at the cubs, then at the other diplomats, then at Day Wan. "Why?" she asked finally. Her voice was quieter now, confused rather than angry. "Why do you help everyone? Even your enemies? Even those who have nothing to offer you? What do you gain?" Day Wan took a breath. The cold air stung his lungs. He looked at the cubs around him, so brave and small. He thought about his answer carefully. "We remember," he said softly. "My people remember when we were alone. When we first reached the stars, we were scared and unprepared. We made mistakes. We had disasters. And sometimes no one helped us because we had nothing to offer. We lost people. We lost colonies. We learned what it feels like to be abandoned." He paused, then continued. "So now, when we see others suffering, we help. Not because we want something, not because we'll benefit, but because we remember being in the dark, hoping someone would come. We help because we know what it's like when no one does." Liz spoke up again. "That sounds like honor to me." Keir nodded. "The truest kind of honor. Not honor for glory. Honor for its own sake." Vesera stood very still. She looked at the food the cubs had arranged at Day Wan's feet. Traditional ceremonial dishes, prepared with care, offered with love. The kind of offering given to great warriors and heroes in old times. "Children see what we forget," she said quietly, almost to herself. Then, louder, to everyone, "This feast is ended. Everyone return inside." The cubs looked worried. Were they about to be punished? But Vesera wasn't finished speaking. "Return inside," she said. "Bring the tables, bring the food, bring the music. If this human is not worthy of our feast hall, then our feast hall is not worthy of anyone." She looked directly at Day Wan. "The celebration will continue here. Outside, under the stars, as it should." Nobody moved. The courtyard was completely silent. Cubs, adults, and diplomats all stared at High Matriarch Vesera. Had they heard her correctly? Move the feast outside? Matriarch, one of the elder Velkorians, spoke carefully. His name was Torvan, and he was very old and very traditional. "Surely you don't mean—" "I mean exactly what I said." Vesera's voice was firm. "Bring everything outside. Tables, chairs, food, musicians. Everything." If we are to have a feast, we will have it here." "But this is unprecedented," another elder protested. "The Grand Convergence has always been held inside the palace. It's tradition." "Tradition," Vesera repeated, looking at the cubs who still surrounded Day-Wan. "Yes, tradition. We follow our traditions so carefully. But what about the oldest tradition of all? The law of scales. Balance in all things. These cubs understand what we forgot." Kyr's mother stepped forward. She looked torn between pride and concern. "High Matriarch, the cubs acted without permission. Shouldn't there be consequences?" Vesera walked to where the cubs stood. She looked down at each young face. Kyr, trying to be brave even though he was shaking. Liss, defiant and strong. Nem, thoughtful and serious. Little Isa with tears still on her face. All 12 of them linked together, refusing to abandon what they knew was right. "Consequences," Vesera said slowly. "Yes, there should be consequences." She raised her voice so everyone could hear. "These cubs will be honored. They showed true courage. They stood up to their elders, risked punishment, and upheld the most sacred of our laws. They balanced the scales when we refused to." She knelt down, bringing herself to the cubs' level. This was shocking. The High Matriarch never knelt to anyone. "You have taught me shame," she said to them quietly. "And you have taught me wisdom. Thank you." Isa ran forward and hugged Vesera. The old matriarch stiffened for a moment, then softened. She patted the small cub's head gently. Day-Wan cleared his throat. "High Matriarch, you don't need to do this. I can leave." "I don't want to cause more trouble or—" "Silence," Vesera said, but not unkindly. She stood up and faced him. "You have caused nothing but good, Captain Day-Wan. The trouble was ours, the shame was ours, and now the correction must be ours as well." She turned to the crowd of Velkorians. "I have been foolish. I let pride and old hatreds cloud my judgment. I called the humans weak because they help everyone. But is that weakness? Or is it the greatest strength of all?" Torvan spoke again. "But Matriarch, they helped the Kryn, our enemies. Surely you cannot—" "Enemies," Vork the Kryn interrupted, stepping forward. "We keep using that word. But what does it mean anymore? Yes, we fought wars. Yes, there was blood and death and pain. But that was generations ago. Our children don't even remember why we fought." Another Kryn diplomat joined him. "When my people were starving, the humans didn't ask about our history with the Velkorians. They didn't care about old wars. They saw need and they filled it. That's all." "But honor demands," Torvan started. "Honor demands that we protect what matters," Liss interrupted. The young cub spoke with such certainty that even the old elder stopped to listen. What matters more, old hatreds or living children, pride or survival? The humans chose survival. They chose life. Isn't that what honor should be? Nem added his voice. "My teacher says that true wisdom is knowing when old rules no longer serve us. Maybe the rule about not helping enemies is an old rule that causes more harm than good." Vesera looked at her people. She saw the confusion on their faces, but also something else. Consideration. Doubt. The beginning of change. "I was wrong," she said clearly. "I judged the humans by old standards that no longer apply. The galaxy is changing. We must change with it or be left behind." She walked to Day-Wan and did something that shocked everyone. She bowed to him. A full, deep bow. The kind reserved for warriors who had saved your life. "On behalf of my people, I apologize. Your kindness was repaid with insult. Your help was answered with rejection. This was wrong. We were wrong. I was wrong." Day-Wan looked uncomfortable. "Matriarch, please stand up. You don't need to—" "I do need to," Vesera said, rising, "because actions have meaning. And this action shows that I understand my error." She raised her voice again. "From this moment, humans are declared honorkin of Velkor. This is the highest status we can grant. It means you are considered family. Your people will always be welcome here." Murmurs ran through the crowd. Honorkin was incredibly rare. It had only been granted 3 times in Velkorian history. "Furthermore," Vesera continued, "let it be carved in stone and written in our histories. The human's way is not weakness. Their compassion is not lack of honor. They have shown us a new path. They help not because they are weak, but because they are strong enough to care." Day Wan felt his throat tighten with emotion. He hadn't expected this, any of this. He had been prepared to sit in the cold all night, to be rejected and mocked. Instead, he was being honored beyond measure. "I don't know what to say," he admitted. "Say you'll forgive us," Vesera replied. "Say you'll stay for the feast. Say you'll help us learn to be better." Kir tugged on Day Wan's sleeve. "Please say yes. We want you to stay." Day Wan looked down at the young cub and smiled. "How can I refuse when asked so nicely?" Vesera clapped her hands sharply. "You heard my orders. Servants, guards, everyone. Bring the feast outside. Tables and chairs first, then food, then musicians. Move quickly. Our guest has been waiting long enough." What followed was organized chaos. Velkorian servants and guards rushed into action. They carried long tables through the palace doors and set them up in the courtyard. Chairs followed. Then came the food, platter after platter, bowl after bowl. The servants worked fast, motivated by their matriarch's determination. Musicians emerged with their instruments. They set up near the courtyard wall and began to play. The music filled the cold night air, beautiful and warm. The diplomats from other species came outside, too. They seemed pleased by this turn of events. Many of them approached Day Wan to shake his hand or offer words of support. The Thresh ambassador spoke in her musical voice. "We are glad to see this outcome. Your people have earned much respect, Captain." A Pinnack diplomat, small and furry, patted Day Wan's leg. "The cubs were right to do what they did. Sometimes the young see clearly what the old miss." More and more people came to speak with him, to thank him, to share their own stories of human kindness. Day Wan was overwhelmed but grateful. The tables were set up in a large circle around the courtyard. Lanterns were hung from posts and trees, providing warm light. The food was arranged beautifully, just as it had been inside. But somehow it looked better out here, under the stars. Vesera personally led Day Wan to a seat at the center table. It was the seat of highest honor, the place traditionally reserved for heroes and champions. "This is where you belong," she said firmly. "Next to you, we will seat the cubs who showed us the way." Kir, Liss, Nem, Isa, and all the other cubs were brought to sit near Day Wan. They were given places of honor, too. Their parents looked stunned but proud. As everyone took their seats, Vesera stood and raised her glass. The courtyard fell silent. "Tonight we learned an important lesson," she announced. "We learned that honor is not about pride. It's not about keeping grudges or refusing help to those we dislike. True honor is in the giving. True strength is in compassion. The humans have shown us this, and our cubs, bless them, were wise enough to see it." She looked directly at Day Wan. "Captain, you and your people have saved our colonies. You've healed our sick, fed our hungry, and asked for nothing in return. We repaid this with insult. But no more. From now on, humans will always have a place at our table. Always have a place in our hearts. Always have a place in our world." Everyone raised their glasses. Even old Torvan, though he looked like he was still processing everything that had happened. "To the humans!" Vesera called out. "To the humans!" the crowd echoed. "And to the cubs who taught us wisdom!" Vesera added. "To the cubs!" everyone shouted. The feast began. Under the stars, in the cold night air that somehow felt warm now, different species ate together and talked and laughed. The cubs stayed close to Day Wan, asking him questions about Earth and telling him more stories about the colonies. And for the first time that night, Day-Wan felt truly welcome. The courtyard had transformed into something magical. Lanterns hung from every tree and post, casting golden light across the stone. The tables formed a large circle so everyone could see each other. Musicians played gentle music that mixed with the sound of conversation and laughter. The cold night air didn't seem so cold anymore. Day-Wan sat at the center table, still not quite believing what had happened. Just an hour ago, he had been alone and rejected. Now he was surrounded by friends. The cubs had claimed the seats closest to him. Kir sat on his right, Liss on his left. Nem was next to Kir, and little Isa had somehow ended up on Day-Wan's lap, refusing to sit anywhere else. "Tell us about Earth," Kir asked, his green eyes bright with curiosity. "Is it true that your whole planet is one big family, that you don't have separate tribes?" Day-Wan smiled. "Well, it's complicated. We have different countries and cultures, but you're right that we see ourselves as one species now. It wasn't always like that. We had wars, just like other species, but we learned that we were stronger together." "How did you learn?" Nem asked, always wanting to understand the deeper meaning. "We almost destroyed ourselves," Day-Wan said honestly. "We fought over land, resources, beliefs. We created weapons that could kill millions. And then one day we realized we had a choice. Keep fighting until nothing was left or find a better way." "You chose the better way," Liss said with certainty. "We did. It wasn't easy. It took generations. But slowly we learned to work together. And when we finally reached the stars and met other species, we decided we would never let old hatreds control us again." Isa looked up at him with wide eyes. "Is that why you helped the Kryn, even though they were enemies?" "Yes," Day-Wan said softly. "Because we remember what it's like to be enemies with someone. And we remember that enemies are just people we haven't made peace with yet." Vesra, sitting nearby, overheard this. She nodded slowly, as if something had finally clicked into place in her mind. Food was served. The Velkorians had brought out their finest dishes. Roasted meats glazed with sweet spices, vegetables from a dozen different worlds, breads that melted in your mouth, fruits that sparkled like jewels, and the ceremonial nectar that the cubs had brought outside earlier, now served to everyone. Day-Wan tried everything. The cubs watched him eagerly, wanting to see his reaction to their traditional foods. "This is incredible," he said honestly after tasting the ceremonial meat. "I've never had anything like this." Kir beamed with pride. "It's made with honey from the silver trees and spices from the mountain caves. It takes 3 days to prepare." "And you brought this to me in the cold," Day-Wan said, feeling emotional again. "You risked so much." "It was worth it," Kir replied simply. Around the courtyard, other conversations were happening. The Kryn diplomats were talking with Velkorian elders, finally having real conversations instead of exchanging cold formalities. The Thresh representatives were teaching young Velkorians a traditional dance from their world. Even old Torvon was speaking with a human aide from Day-Wan's ship, asking questions about Earth's history. Change was happening. Slowly, carefully, but really happening. A young Velkorian approached the table nervously. She was older than the cubs, but still young, maybe 16 in Earth years. Her name was Sora. "Captain Day-Wan," she said quietly. "Do you remember me?" Day-Wan looked at her carefully. There was something familiar about her face. Then it hit him. "Sora, from Colony 7, you were so sick with the red fever, we thought—" "You thought I would die," Sora finished. "So did I." "The colony doctors had given up, but you and your team stayed with me. Dr. Hai sat by my bed for 2 days straight. She told me stories about Earth to keep me awake, and when I finally got better, she cried." Sora was crying now, too. "I wanted to thank you. I wanted to come to the feast tonight to see you, but when I heard you weren't allowed inside, I stayed away. I was ashamed. I should have come out here immediately. I should have been brave like these cubs. She looked at Kier and the others with respect. They did what I should have done. Daewon stood and hugged her. You're here now. That's what matters. More people started approaching. Velkorians from the colonies, people who had been helped by the humans. They came one by one or in small groups to share their stories and their thanks. An older Velkorian named Tal, the engineer who had worked with Daewon on the water systems, came forward. I was wrong about you, he admitted gruffly. I thought humans were soft, weak. I was an idiot. You worked harder than anyone. You never complained. And you taught me new techniques that saved our colony. You taught me Velkorian songs, Daewon reminded him. Fair trade. Tal laughed, a deep rumbling sound. Sing one now. Show everyone you learned. Daewon felt embarrassed. My Velkorian is terrible, and my singing is worse. Sing, the cubs chanted. Sing, sing, sing. Soon the whole courtyard was chanting. Even Vesra was smiling, waiting to hear. Daewon sighed but stood up. He cleared his throat and began singing a traditional Velkorian working song, one that Tal had taught him while they repaired pipes together. His pronunciation was awful, and he got several words wrong, but he sang with heart. When he finished, the courtyard erupted in applause and laughter, but it was good-natured laughter, the kind shared among friends. Terrible, Tal shouted. But I love it anyway. The musicians started playing again, this time a faster song meant for dancing. Cubs jumped up and pulled adults onto the open space between the tables. Soon dozens of people were dancing, mixing species and ages and ranks. Velkorians danced with Kryn. Thresh twirled with Pinax. Even some humans from Daewon's ship had joined the party. Liss grabbed Daewon's hand. Come on, you have to dance. I don't know Velkorian dances, he protested. We'll teach you. Kier grabbed his other hand. Before he could argue, Daewon was pulled into the dancing crowd. The cubs showed him the steps, laughing when he stumbled but encouraging him to keep trying. Other Velkorians joined in, helping him learn. It was messy and chaotic and absolutely wonderful. Vesera watched from her seat, her expression soft. An older female Velkorian sat beside her. This was Sina, Vesera's oldest friend and advisor. You made the right choice, Sina said quietly. I almost made the wrong one, Vesera replied. If not for the cubs. But you listened. That's what matters. Many leaders would have been too proud to change their minds. Vesera watched the cubs dancing with Daewon. They saw what I couldn't, that helping others isn't weakness, that compassion isn't the same as being a fool. The humans give freely because they understand something we forgot. What's that? Sina asked. That we're all connected. That everyone's pain matters. That today's enemy might be tomorrow's friend if we're willing to try. Vesra sipped her nectar. We Velkorians have been so focused on honor and tradition that we forgot the most important tradition of all, kindness. A messenger approached the table, bowing to Vesra. Matriarch, a message has arrived for Captain Daewon. It's marked urgent. Vesera gestured for the messenger to bring Daewon over. The captain came, slightly breathless from dancing, with cubs still clinging to his hands. A message for you, Captain, Vesera said. Marked urgent. Daewon read the message on the datapad. His expression became serious. Bad news? Kier asked worriedly. No, not bad. Just another colony needs help. A species we've never met before. The Rathani. They've had a disaster. Their main city was hit by an earthquake. Many people are trapped. Many are injured. Will you go? Liss asked. Daewon nodded. Of course. That's what we do. Even though you've never met them? Even though they have nothing to offer you? Vesera asked. But she wasn't challenging him. She was simply understanding better. Especially because of that, Daewon said. They need help. We can give it. That's enough. Nem spoke up, his voice thoughtful. You'll go help them just like you helped us. Yes. And someday they might repay the kindness by helping someone else, Nem continued. And it spreads, like ripples in water. One act of kindness creating more kindness. Daewon smiled. Exactly. That's exactly right. Vesra stood. Then you should go. But first. She removed a medal from her own robes. It was ancient, made of silver and marked with the symbol of the Velkorian royal family. This has been in my family for 20 generations. It's given to those who show the truest honor. I want you to have it. Matriarch, I can't. You can and you will. Vesera pinned it to his uniform. Wear it proudly. And when people ask about it, tell them about tonight. Tell them about the cubs who taught their elders wisdom. Tell them about the feast that moved outside. Tell them that the Velkorians learned something new about honor. Daewon touched the medal, feeling its weight. I will. I promise. Isa tugged on his sleeve. Will you come back? After you help the Rothani? If I can, Daewon said. I'd like to. Good, Isa said firmly. Because we'll miss you. The other cubs agreed loudly. They made Daewon promise to visit the colonies again. To teach them more about Earth. To tell them stories about his adventures. As the feast continued into the night, Daewon sent a message to his ship. They would prepare to leave for Rothani territory at first light. But for now, he would enjoy this moment, this celebration, this proof that kindness could change minds and hearts. The twin moons of Velkor Prime rose high in the sky, casting silver light over the courtyard. The music played on. People laughed and danced and shared stories. Cubs ran between the tables, playing games that mixed Velkorian and Thresh and Kryn traditions. And at the center of it all, a human sat with new friends, proving that sometimes the greatest strength was simply choosing to care. When morning came and Daewon finally prepared to leave, the entire courtyard gathered to see him off. Cubs hugged him. Adults bowed. Vesra gave him a formal farewell that included traditional blessings for safe travel. Remember, she said, you always have a home here. The humans always have a home here. Daewon looked at the assembled crowd, at the cubs who had saved him, at the matriarch who had learned to change, at all the faces that had gone from hostile to friendly in one remarkable night. I'll remember, he said, and I'll tell everyone. I'll tell them about the cubs who dragged Platters outside, about the feast under the stars, about the day the Velkorians taught the galaxy what honor really means. As his ship lifted off, heading toward another crisis, another species in need, Daewon looked back at Velkor Prime. He could still see the lanterns in the courtyard, still glowing in the dawn light. And he smiled, knowing that somewhere down there, cubs were probably getting ready for school, eager to tell their teachers about the night they changed everything.